Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated by my Patreon backers. This week's show is one that is very near and dear to my heart because I was there in person, live and in living color. It's No Mercy 2008 at the Rose Garden, of course now known as the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon from October 5th, 2008. I was there alongside my then girlfriend, now my wife. We went to the show together. It was a great time. In fact, if you watch the show on the network, you can actually see us in a couple crowd shots. In fact, at the 2-minute 19 mark, you can see us there. I'll show the picture right here. I'm wearing my old school Unbelievable shirt, and my wife is borrowing one of my Hulk Hogan t-shirts. We were two of the 9,500 plus in attendance on this night. The show got 261,000 pay-per-view buys, down a little bit from 270,000 the previous year. We have not one, not two, but 3 announced teams tonight, technically 2.5. For ECW, we have Todd Grisham and Jerry Lawler, who is filling in for Matt Striker on this night. The idea of Jerry Lawler in a role that's designed to put over ECW in any capacity, even its revival in the company, to me is hilarious. For SmackDown, we have Jim Ross and Taz. And then on Raw, we have Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler once again. Cole and JR had just traded places after the 2008 WWE draft, and that's of course infamously known as the one that Jim Ross was traded to SmackDown, and he was not informed of the switch beforehand. He was as shocked as everybody else that he conveyed it as much on TV. This was the final No Mercy to take place before years later in 2016 when the show was brought back for the second brand split. It was a SmackDown show 2 years ago in Sacramento, and then last year it was in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. I've been to both of those, so I consider myself pretty lucky that I've been to the last 3 No Mercies in WWE history, and one of which was a decade ago. And of course, with a double header main event like this show has, what a way for the show to have gone out at the time. The opening matchups for the ECW Championship. It's ECW's main event here at No Mercy as Matt Hardy, the new champion, defends against Mark Henry, who's accompanied by Tony Atlas. 2 men with the same initials. Who will walk away on top with the full rights to the MH initials? Matt Hardy won the title last month at Unforgiven in the ECW Scramble match. Unforgiven 08 was known as the show with 3 championship Scramble matches, and they only did that match one other time a while later, and it was never brought up again after that point. But Unforgiven 08 was the show known for the Scrambles. So Matt won that match. Chavo Guerrero, Fit Finlay, and The Miz were also part of that as well. So Henry lost the belt without actually losing the decision, and so he's trying to get his championship back here tonight. Hardy, of course, a big underdog going against the world's strongest man, but is super over here. In fact, because Tony Chimmel's announcing, you might say he's super over. Henry uses his size against Hardy early on, but Matt goes for the legs. That's his strategy the entire time. Tony Atlas just constantly yelling.
To Matt Hardy here in the early going.
Henry, hopefully, maybe he'll...
Well, Matt Hardy became ECW champion back at Unforgiven, winning that...
Matt avoids being crushed to death and makes a big comeback. He is able to hit the side effect on Mark, but cannot pull off the twist of fate. Henry hits the world's strongest splash, but he hits his knee on the landing, and so he can't capitalize. He can't get the cover soon enough, so Matt kicks out there. Mark goes for the world's strongest slam, but Matt, with his free arm, is viciously attacking the injured knee of Henry, and that distracts him enough for Matt to slide into a twist of fate to pin and win. Matt Hardy retains the ECW championship, and a very big win for Matt here, kind of a come-from-behind underdog story of toppling the big man. I give this one 2.5 stars. As far as an opening matchup is concerned, I think it did the job. It got the fans hyped up. Matt was the crowd was very much into Matt Hardy and everything he was doing here. Very entertaining, big, little match. You know, that's the kind of story that I always like to see, is how they can pull off, like, how can the little guy do against the guy who's like twice his size. I thought it was very strong storytelling and a very good way for Henry to save face in a loss. Like, he wasn't out-wrestled. He was just basically kind of outsmarted, and like his knee injury got the better of him at the most inopportune times for him, allowing Matt to retain the championship. We toss things over to JR and Taz on the SmackDown team, hyping up the big mobile texting poll. They're saying, like, who are you rooting for in the upcoming match between Jeff Hardy and Triple H? And like, because of the network feed, I'm sure a lot, like the phone numbers and all the rules and stuff they're talking about just aren't there anymore. So like, they just like cut out half of what JR and Taz are saying. So you have all this dead air and this like awkward silence with the music playing underneath. Like, what happened to JR? What happened to Taz?
Who, ladies and gentlemen, are you pulling for in tonight's WWE Championship match?
Speaking of the texting poll, we go backstage to see Triple H and Jeff Hardy, who will be facing each other later in the night, being interviewed by Eve Torres. And Triple H has got his cell phone out and he says, I just did the texting poll and I voted for you, Jeff. I'm rooting for you. You know, in previous segments with the build with these two guys, a lot of the stuff Triple H was saying to Jeff was kind of condescending, kind of a, you'll get him next time, little brother kind of thing. But I think this does a really good job with this segment of like with Triple H really lavishing praise on Jeff and really working to build him up as this guy who may very well could beat him tonight for the championship. Women's Championship match as Beth Phoenix defends against Candice Michelle. But first I have to point out the fact that Beth Phoenix is coming out with Santino Marella, who at this point is the Intercontinental Champion, and combined they are Glamorella, which when I saw them coming out here watching this show, oh man, I got a big smile on my face because I really enjoyed the chemistry with Santino and Beth as Glamorella, with Santino kind of like hiding behind Beth. Like she was the heavy, she was the muscle of the two, and Santino was kind of the comic relief, and just their chemistry I think worked really well together. Candice Michelle is hot with the crowd. She just got back from a big shoulder injury she got after face planting off of the top turnbuckle, and that's the big story in this matchup here. Beth is working the shoulder pretty aggressively. Candice does make a comeback, and while she's got Beth pinned, Santino pulls Beth not just like out from under the pinning predicament, just yanks her right out of the ring. So that's like kind of strike one against Santino here. The whole story is that Beth doesn't want Santino to be at ringside, but he's there anyway. So somehow he was able to convince her to stick around because Santino had been causing her to lose as of late. So yanks Beth right out of the ring in order to prevent a pin from happening. Candice drop kicks Santino through the ropes, but Beth just like takes Candice out on the outside and Candice eats shit. Santino inadvertently trips up Beth as she's selling. So he's leaning on her leg while she's climbing into the ring. So there's a distraction there. Candice rolls up. You think it's going to be the end. No, Beth is able to kick out. She does hit the Glam Slam on Candice to retain the championship, and so Glamorella keeps both of their belts intact for now. I'm going to give this match 1.5 stars. Both women did well in the ring. It was a decent match. That's about the best I can say about it. Nothing earth-shattering with this matchup here. Good selling by Candice, especially with the shoulder injury and everything. It was, a solid match, but nothing amazing, with a very strong ending for Beth. We get a backstage promo by Kane directed toward Rey Mysterio where he says, the facade that you call pride, the charade that you call courage will be destroyed when I unmask you in the middle of this ring. And Kane says he will reveal Rey and all of his fans by proxy for what they really are. They're the real monsters, and that's rich coming from the big red monster Kane. It's like if you call somebody out for saying something racist or doing something racist, then come back to you and say, hey man, you acknowledged racism, that means you're the racist. So yes, Kane versus Rey Mysterio is up next. It is, 2 out of the first 3 matches on this show are big versus little matches. We'll see how they can change things up from the opener with Matt Hardy and Mark Henry. Though the stipulation here is if Rey loses the match here, he must unmask. This is part of the build, or part of the culmination, I should say, toward this big multi-month feud that Kane and Rey were involved in, where for a long time when Rey was out with an injury, Kane was going around and saying, is he alive or is he dead? Is he alive or is he dead? And then eventually started carrying this little burlap sack, which everyone believed contained Kane's mask. So there was kind of this red herring of, oh, is Kane going to put the mask back on? This thing that people have been calling for years and wouldn't be realized for another couple of years after that. So then finally, GM Mike Adamle, and there's a whole topic for another video down the line, Adamle tells Kane to, he's trying to work with him, just trying to, bring the mask out and we can talk about this. And then, Kane pulls out the mask, but it's not his, it's Rey Mysterio's mask. And so I guess the story they were trying to tell here was that at some point and for some length of time, Rey was being held hostage by Kane and being tortured and everything, yet he was able to escape somehow and also have his mask back on. That part of the story is a little muddled to me, and I never quite understood what the deal was. That angle is that part of it anyway. So this is Kane's trying to unmask Rey in front of everybody and to show everyone what a monster he is and everything. Basically, his mask it's a disguise, to hide the true evil in himself or whatever. At one point in the match, Cole brings up how Rey's look is inspired by the Aztecs, and Lawler with a real pearl of wisdom on commentary.
One thing we got to keep in mind. The Aztecs became extinct.
Kane using his brute strength to toss Rey around like a rag doll. It's one of the things that Rey is best known for, honestly. He dumps Rey into the timekeeper's area and starts working his back. Rey is able to use his quickness and his agility to stay alive where he can. He almost misses a big top rope moonsault onto Kane, but barely just clips him with his leg. Just gets a little bit of it. He goes for another top rope attack, but then Kane just canes him in midair. That's the phrase, by the way. It's not an uppercut. In my circle, we just call it the cane. He caned you. So that's what he did. He caned Rey Mysterio in midair. Rey with a 619 right in the tuchus on the apron. He dives off the top rope to the outside, but then Kane intercepts him, thwacks him with a steel chair, and the match ends in a disqualification. So Rey is just laid out, and Kane just heads off. So he didn't really get to accomplish what he wanted to in this case. I do give the match 2 stars out of 4. I credit them for telling a different story than the Hardy-Henry match in the opener. It can't be easy to do when you have 2 matches so close together that are little big matches. It really is a testament to everyone involved to create 2 separate stories here because, you know, Kane wasn't really getting his leg worked by Rey, for example. It was a different kind of thing where Rey was just having to bob and weave and just outmaneuver Kane in this case. The DQ finish was disappointing, but it does protect Kane from being beaten, and Rey doesn't have to unmask, he doesn't have to lose, so it's kind of a win-win in that sense. But yeah, that kind of dinged it a little bit for me. We go back to JR and Taz, who once again hype up the mobile pole, and once again you cannot hear half of what they're saying. We then go to Cole and King at ringside hyping up Cyber Sunday, which is the next pay-per-view, and Jerry Lawler says one of the grossest things I've ever heard, intentional or otherwise, and from Jerry Lawler, that's saying something.
I have my laptop right here in front of me, and I'd love to pull it out during Cyber Sunday and just come all over that information. Pull it out during Cyber Sunday and just come all over that information. Come all over that information.
Well, now it's time for the show to come to an ass-screeching halt because MVP comes out for some promo time. He is mad that he is not booked on the show for a match tonight. He equates it to LeBron James getting benched in Cleveland. Randy Orton interrupts. He's still recovering from a shoulder injury, so he's not wrestling yet at this point. He says that if MVP were given the ball, he would drop it. And Orton says he won the main event at WrestleMania that year. It was actually the third to last match. And meanwhile, at that show, MVP lost the Money in the Bank match. So who's really better here? Outcome priceless. That's the Raw Tag Champs, Ted DiBiase, Cody Rhodes, and Manu. They're heavy. Cody is only a few words into his speech here towards Orton when a boring chant begins. Cody is able to recover by saying, you know, there's one thing you are, Randy, and you're not boring. You're the guy. And then, you know, they go from there. He basically, Cody says Orton is coasting on his reputation, just like a high school, someone who really peaked in high school. Orton says, you know, you guys aren't on my level, and he leaves. And not too far after this, Orton would come back, and then the 4 of them would form Legacy, and then Manu would get kicked out. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, after Orton leaves, MVP and Priceless are still talking. Why is it still going on? MVP he tries to flaunt his money over those guys. He said, I'm getting paid more than all you guys combined. And Ted DiBiase rightly goes, hey, genius, my dad's the $1 million man. Last time I had to worry about money was, let me think, oh, that's right, never. And so then MVP is kind of dejected and walks away. Out come the former world champion CM Punk and his friend Kofi Kingston, who at this point is still Jamaican in canon. And so then Punk and Kofi convince MVP to, the 3 of them, to run down there and attack DiBiase, Rhodes, and Manu. And so they all run down, but Punk and Kofi stop, so MVP gets beat up by the 3 guys for a little bit. And so Punk and Kofi laugh at him, but then they get in the ring to even the odds and beat up Rhodes and DiBiase on their own. That's the end of the segment, and boy, that was a waste of time. It went about 10 minutes, and it's just like you couldn't have given more time to other people, or you couldn't have just done another match in that spot. If you're gonna have this segment where like, I'm not booked tonight, if they're there, put them in a match or something. Like, promo segments in pay-per-views don't work because it just came off like a complete segment you would see on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, not something that people paid money to see like a pay-per-view. I vividly remember being there when this was going on and being bored there. I can't imagine how it translated to the TV audience watching. Up next, Batista versus JBL. Is this a SmackDown match, you ask? No, this is a match for Raw because it's a #1 contenders match for the World Heavyweight Championship, which was on Raw at the time. I completely forget about this chapter for both guys being on Raw because like they were so synonymous with SmackDown. That's where they were made and really became stars. So the fact they moved to Raw at some point is I completely spaced it. Like I said, it's a #1 contenders match. JBL, his heart is not in it, man, because the stock market just crashed and sent us all into a financial recession. recession here in the US of A, and so he's very sad because he's losing some money. It's a storyline that ripped straight from the headlines. It's not much this match, honestly. It's a hoss fight. It's a slugfest, big power moves. It's a very uninspired matchup. This match didn't really have a whole lot of heat to it, not a whole lot of build. They just kind of threw these guys together, I feel, and they had a match. It was serviceable, but this was a match that also I think could have been on Raw or SmackDown because this one didn't have a big fight feel. There's no, basically, JBL gets hit with the spear, he rolls out, they fight some more. They keep fighting, JBL gets hit with a spine buster, Batista bomb, Batista wins, and he gets a title shot against the winner of the main event tonight. And that was it. So I give it 1 star. This match didn't really do much for me. Pretty bland. Like I said, not a whole lot of heat to it. But the real highlight for this match wasn't the match itself, was right afterward where JBL, still selling and still kind of rolling on the ground. It's like, I've had the worst week of my life because, the stock market crashed and everything, and he lost his match with Batista. But he says, I am blessed, I am happy because my good friends in Congress, thank you, Congress, for those bailouts you've given to the big companies, the banks and the car companies and everything, because it allows me to stay rich so I can afford my penthouse apartment on Central Park. So JBL's getting all this heat for talking about how rich he is. JBL says, I will not soon forget this backwater town of Portland, Oregon. And he's just about to leave, and then on the screen, Crime Time interrupts, and you see Shad and JTG say they're going to commandeer JBL's new limousine, and they're going to go out cavorting with all the divas and Sergeant Slaughter for good measure. Of course, Slaughter, little known fact, has a bit of a Portland history, having worked in the territories as Bob Remus. So there you go. And that's how the whole thing ends. And JR with a great call after the segment as well, saying even Sarge got bailed out. Yeah, the match itself wasn't that interesting. The post-match promo, though, it made me smile just at how shitty of a heel JBL is, in the best way possible, I might add. And then he gets a bit of a comeuppance at the end. Our next match is The Undertaker versus The Big Show. At Unforgiven last month, Big Show committed his 133rd heel turn, give or take a few, by punching out The Undertaker and aligning with Vicky Guerrero, the general manager of SmackDown. And so now you've got this group of Big Show and Chavo Guerrero, and Vicky is there too, is kind of the leader there. They want The Undertaker to apologize, Undertaker. But instead of an apology, The Undertaker gives Vicky a tombstone piledriver in the middle of the ring. And now Show is fighting Taker on behalf of Vicky Guerrero. We finally get JR and Taz on commentary proper after more than halfway into this show. JR compares The Undertaker to Sasquatch because they're in the Pacific Northwest. He's busting out all the big words in this entrance here. He says, the most spellbinding, mesmerizing moments in sports entertainment has wrapped his arms around us. Oh yes, Undertaker's giving us all a big, dark, evil hug, and he describes Big Show as cyclopean. Oh man, what a word. That's a Gordon Sully word right there. Big Show's working the body with some of those hard-looking shots, is able to overpower Taker quite handily. Show goes to the second rope to go for an elbow, but Taker is able to escape. The Big Show counters Old School with a choke slam, and there's a kick out. We get a double goozle. It ends with Taker jumping up, countering the choke slam attempt with a big old DDT. Show removes the turnbuckle pad when the referee is not looking, drives Taker's face into it. He follows it up with that one big punch he's got, and then he hits another one. JR describes it as portentous. Then there's a third punch to the back of the head when Undertaker is prone. The referee throws out the match and declares Big Show the winner. I'm going to give this one 2 stars out of 4. I think these two had a good showing. It was not a bad match by any stretch. But it wasn't really amazing either, right in the middle. It was a pretty creative finish to really show Taker as this wounded dog, and it really gets Big Show over as this killer, this unrelenting, evil heel for him to punch Taker in the back of the head with a big fist and everything. It was a good fight by The Undertaker here. It's nice to see his older matches and see where he can still move with some quickness. Taker gets up after the punches. He is shell shot. His eyes look glazed over and everything. He and Big Show will continue to feud pretty much for the end of the fall here because they would wrestle a last man standing match at Cyber Sunday. They'd wrestle a casket match at Survivor Series and then a cage match on SmackDown. All of those matches Big Show would lose. So at least he got a win over The Undertaker in kind of dominant fashion here at No Mercy. In the first of our 2 main events, we have the WWE Championship match as Triple H defends against Jeff Hardy. Now, these guys go way back. Famously, Jeff's first real landmark singles win was on an episode of SmackDown when he beat Triple H for the Intercontinental Championship. He would go on to drop it back to Triple H the very next week on Raw, but it was still a huge deal for Jeff at the time. And JR actually brings that match up on commentary as well. Now, last month in Unforgiven, Triple H and Jeff were the 2 primary parties in the WWE Championship scramble match at Unforgiven, which also featured MVP Shelton Benjamin and Brian Kendrick. But those guys aren't really important to the story because the whole story was Jeff and Triple H. And Triple H would eventually, he came in as the champion and the very last second got the title back and was able to retain his championship. The big narrative they're pushing here with Jeff Hardy is that he's always been like one slip up or 1 second or one, thing happening away from grabbing the proverbial brass ring, but he's always come up just short. He's kind of always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And Triple H tries to get in his head with that, but Jeff says it's only motivated him to work harder and to finally get the brass ring and win the championship off of Triple H leading into this matchup. It is a face versus face encounter. This is that weird period of time when Triple H is a babyface on SmackDown. The match is wrestled fairly clean, in fact, through the most of this match. Jeff with a lot of headlocks, working the head on Triple H, doing a lot of grappling stuff, trying to match Triple H hold for hold. Triple H does catch a break when Jeff goes for the plancha to the outside and just whiffs it and just eats shit, hits his back on the concrete there. Hardy with a lot of heart, though. He's able to kick out of a lot of Triple H's offense. Tripp starts to bend the rules, grabbing the ropes, that abdominal stretch. Hardy throws Triple H out of the ring, nails the plancha, this time on the second attempt. It's great back and forth between these two. Watching this match here and just seeing how good it is makes you realize, man, these two did not really get a chance to do a lot. They didn't have, they wrestled occasionally, obviously, but you never really got to see. Besides this is probably the biggest example of any kind of long, protracted feud between these two. But even then, with Triple H and Jeff, it was never really one-on-one stuff. This is probably one of the only one-on-one matches, at least on pay-per-view, that these two ever had, and it's a shame because I think they had great chemistry. Jeff is able to hit the Whisper in the Wind, but he misses the Swanton Bomb. Triple H goes for a pedigree for the second time, but Jeff counters it with a Twist of Fate. He does hit the Swanton this time. He's got Triple H pinned. He's doing kind of like a leaning back pin on him, and at the 2 count, that's when Triple H hooks Jeff's arm, rolls him back up for a pin of his own. 3 count, Triple H retains by the skin of his teeth, and once again, Hardy is just 1 second away from grabbing that brass ring and falls short just again. What a terrific match this was. I give it 3.5 stars out of 4. Great effort by both these guys. Great battle, and like I said, the back and forth, the story they were telling, I think was just phenomenal work by these guys. Jeff would remain in the title picture for several months after this. By the end of the year, he would win the world title for the first time in a triple threat match with Edge, the champion, and Triple H, and that would begin his real kind of his coronation as a main event guy. After the match, Triple H is confronted by Vladimir Kozlov. Totally forgot these two had a feud for a while, and I am not looking forward to reliving that anytime soon. Now it's time for the real main event. It's the ladder match for the World Heavyweight Championship as Chris Jericho defends against Shawn Michaels. It is the apex of this intense, awesome personal rivalry these two had for the better part of 2008. It all started months ago when Jericho turned heel on Shawn, calling him a hypocrite through Shawn's face into the obscenely expensive Jeritron 5000. That was what set Jericho on this path to becoming this super serious, suit-wearing heel that said he was the best in the world, calling the fans parasites and everything. He said it was inspired by Javier Bardem's character in No Country for Old Men, that sort of thing. So anyway, at SummerSlam that year, Shawn came out with his wife and he was teasing he was going to retire because he got hit in the eye too hard or whatever. And then Jericho comes out to confront him. Jericho takes a swing and Shawn ducks, and so Jericho pops Shawn's wife Rebecca right in the mouth for realsies. Basically, he didn't pull his punch enough, and so Rebecca got like a busted lip after the punch and everything, and that caused some tension between the two IRL. And so anyway, at Unforgiven, these two had an unsanctioned street fight match. Shawn won the match after the referee called it because Jericho was getting beat up too much, too bloody and everything. So Shawn won the battle, but Jericho later by the end of the night would end the show as the world champion because CM Punk, the champ at the time, was taken out backstage by Randy Orton and Priceless. And so there's a 5th spot remaining. Chris Jericho waltzes in. He's beat up, but he is able to recover and win the title from under everyone's nose in one of the really big shockers of 2008. That was kind of like the culmination of all the work he's been doing as a heel up to this point. And so then after Unforgiven, it was announced No Mercy. Shawn would fight for the championship in a ladder match, a match that he made famous. To me, the highlight for this build, and they show it in the hype package, I remember this and I love seeing it here again in the package, is when Jericho, his very famous promo, sitting atop the ladder, and then he closes everything out by saying, "This is what you're going to see at No Mercy," and he pulls the belt down, and he has this shocked look on his face, like, like that facial expression that Jericho had, to me, was just money. And it's one of the few things where it's like, he's such a detestable heel, but that was also pretty funny. And speaking of detestable heel, like, listen to that reaction Jericho gets for his entrance. It is all boos. There's no like ironic, "Yeah, you're awesome" cheers that we normally hear like in today's environment. Like, he is a heel's heel. Like, he has done a lot in the last several months to really build up his reputation as this complete asshole, and it really worked. And just the fact that Jericho was able to do that after this rocky start to his comeback, like late the previous year, I think it was just amazing turnaround, and he became like the wrestler to watch at that time period. Chris gets a busted lip like minutes into the matchup here. He's using the ladder as a weapon against Shawn. Shawn counters a bulldog by shoving Jericho leg first into the ladder, then dumping him onto his back. Jericho at one point with this brutal slam of the ladder to the back of Shawn's head. God, it looks disgusting. Shawn throws Jericho into a ladder set up in the corner, and that causes him to tumble out of the ring. Then Shawn just drops the ladder onto his face on the outside. They fight on a ladder in front of the SmackDown announce table for all the good it's been doing there all night. Jericho and Shawn drop each other with like a belly-to-back suplex off the ladder through the table, knocking them both out. Jericho tries to superplex Shawn over a ladder leaned up against the corner, which seems like an impractical move because physically, if you did that, if you pull it off, the ladder's still falling on you. Sure enough, Shawn shoves Jericho back. The ladder kind of falls on him. Then Shawn does an elbow drop off the top and onto the ladder, and Shawn sells the elbow like it got broken or something, which, yeah, like that would mess your elbow up pretty considerably. Like, usually, I would imagine if you're doing an elbow drop to a ladder that's on top of a guy, you're probably going to get the worst of it because, like, yeah, it's going to hurt the guy under the ladder, but it's your elbow that's getting hit by the ladder. At one point, Jericho climbs the ladder with Shawn trapped underneath. He's able to bench press one half of the ladder and get it up, and so it tips Jericho over the top of the ladder onto the outside. He takes a nasty spill. Looks like he rolls his ankle, perhaps, in the fall. That was just, like, scary. It was scary watching it live, and it didn't look any better watching it on television here on the playback. Shawn climbs the ladder, but Jericho catches him. They're both on there. They're on either side of the ladder, and Jericho gets hung upside down by his leg. Shawn has the opportunity, but out comes Lance Cade. It's Chris Jericho's running buddy. He shows up to save Jericho, and he eats sweet chin music for his troubles. He's no longer a factor in the match. Both men are grabbing the belt, and they're leaning back. It's this big tug-of-war. Jericho's grabbing the belt by one hand, and he's teetering backward. And so finally, Shawn pulls him closer. Jericho with a headbutt to Shawn. Shawn falls down. Jericho grabs the belt. He then falls off the ladder pretty hard, and he wins the match, retains the championship. I will never forget the fact that as that moment was happening, with the headbutt and the fall and grabbing the belt, some asshole in front of me and my wife at the show got up to walk away and blocked my view. I will never forget that guy. I'll never forgive him for blocking my view of this awesome moment. Anyway, 4 stars out of 4 is what I'm giving this match. Just a great, physical, intense, brutal ladder match. Probably one of the better ladder matches you will ever see that doesn't involve crazy flip-de-doos and stuff. This was just so good and such a great way to kind of like blow off this story. We wouldn't see these two. This is probably the apex of the feud. They'd wrestle periodically after this, but never with the stakes as high as what we had in this match here. But man, what a blow off, because you could just feel the ire and the intensity and the disdain that these two have for each other as they're just beating the piss out of each other. It looks like they're beating each other up, and like neither man's going to be the same after this. Jericho is like a bloody, quivering mess at the end of it. I don't know how much of a shoot that is, but he went through a lot. That teaches you a thing or two, Jericho, because you walked under the ladder and you got the fuck beat out of you the entirety of this matchup, and you lost a tooth. So, maybe the bad luck when you walk under the ladder, maybe there's some truth to that. My final grade for No Mercy 2008, the final No Mercy of the original brand split, is going to be a B grade. On this show, 4 matches really stood out to me as my highlights. The ECW title match opener with Matt Hardy, I almost called him Matt Henry, Matt Hardy and Mark Henry. Kane versus Mysterio was an entertaining matchup there. Triple H versus Hardy, great match. Jericho and Michaels, awesome match, and easily one of the best parts of 2008. Was this feud that Jericho and Michaels had. It bears repeating. Like, go back and watch this. I could watch that match again and again It's that good. The downside to the show for me was just like this endless promo with MVP and Orton and, you know, Rose DiBiase and Manu, and then Punk and Kofi get involved as well. That's just like, this really could have been just a match. And then you had JBL versus Batista, kind of a meh kind of match. It's like has these big stakes, but like to me, it just felt like kind of a nothing burger of a match. That's pretty much the way I see it here. Overall, very strong show. And yes, I have to admit the nostalgia of me being there live to see it might have helped things a bit, but there's definitely some like kind of like things about this show, but the good stuff was just great. Thanks once again to John for nominating No Mercy 2008 for me to review. If you want to play a role in determining which classic shows I review in the future, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the opportunity to nominate shows for me to review here on this channel. Next time in the classic review segment, by the time that comes out, it might be past Halloween, but it's never too late to talk about Halloween Havoc, folks. And why not we talk about Halloween Havoc 1998? I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.